So welcome everyone to Next Step College Ready, Set, Apply. It is a pleasure to be with you all today. My name is Diana Hernandez. I am an admission counselor here at the Office of Undergraduate Admission at California Lutheran University. I'm also a proud Cal Lutheran alum. Been an admission counselor now for a little bit over 5 years, and I am so happy that you all are here today. I know how stressful applying to college was for me. I saw my little sister go through it. I work with a lot of our senior students as they go through the process. And so I'm really excited to be with you all today to share a little bit of information. So again, my name is Diana. My pronouns are she, hers, ella. And I'll go through the information. We are leaving some time for Q&A at the end. But I also want to make sure that you all know that you can use the chat function. You can also use the Q&A function. I will try to answer questions as I go. I may not get to all of them as the presentation is going on, but we will definitely get to some Q&A time at the end. And so what is this session about, right? So you have found maybe your dream school or maybe a couple of schools that you want to apply to, but how do you actually get started? What do you need to do to put your best foot forward? How do you maybe improve your chances of getting in, or how do you make sure your application is being competitive? Or really the big one is, where do you even start with this, right? There's so many different institutions, different applications that are going on, and each one asks similar questions, but also different questions at the same time. And so how can we keep track of all of that? Our agenda for today, we are going to start by going over a little bit about the CSUS, followed by the UCs, and then applying to Cal Lutheran, specifically via the Common Application. And so this webinar isn't specific to Cal Lutheran. Really, this is meant to provide you all with information, some tips, tricks, tools that you can use as you go through the application process. And then we'll definitely finish with writing your personal statement for your essay, or tips that you can use to answer your personal insight questions, or really a scholarship essay too. So you can use these tips a lot of different ways as you go through the college search process. Okay, so if you're ready, we'll go ahead and get started. So again, we'll start with the CSUs, right? Breaking down kind of the application. We'll start by breaking down the California State University schools and their application. If I say something and you want some more information, please feel free to put it in the chat. Like I said, I am keeping an eye on both of them, and we'll go ahead and get started. And so the CSUs, they are great because they have one application for all 23 of their campuses. And so all you need to do is focus on that one application, and they share the information. So you say you wanted to apply all 23 schools, you don't need to fill out those 23 applications. One of my favorite things about the CSU is that they have their eligibility index. That's something you can go online. You could do it as of right now. And essentially what you do is you put in your GPA, and then it tells you, for example, what test score you need to be able to be admissible. Or you want to kind of see like, okay, if I have this GPA right now, but maybe at the end of my senior year or at the end of my 7th semester, I'm going to maybe have this GPA. What does that look like? And so that's really neat. It relieves a lot of the stress for you to know if you're admissible or not. And that's something, like I said, that you can go ahead and start doing as of right now. They also follow the A3G requirements. And so I'm sure you're all familiar with those, but it's those requirements that have you do, for example, 4 years of English, 3 years of history. I think it's 3 years of history, or maybe 2 years of math recommended. I'm not sure all the specifics, so don't quote me on those numbers, but it is also all online. I'm sure a lot of your high school counselors, college counselors also have this information. For the most part, high school graduation requirements are going to line up with those A through G requirements. If you're meeting your high school's graduation requirements, chances are you are also meeting those A through G. And it is important that you know that you need to be passing those classes, right? And so you can't have, for example, a D or an F. You need to be having a C or higher for you to be able to count that class as a successful completion in those A through G requirements. I also want to take a moment and chat about an amazing opportunity that they have, which is their EOP, or Educational Opportunity Program. And so this is an extra support system that students can opt into. And so when you're filling out your application, it will ask if that is something that you are interested in. It provides admission, transitional, academic, and financial assistance based on economic eligibility. So it's based on your household's income. So it's a little bit about the application itself. Now the details, right? The nitty-gritty of what you need to know. So application opens October 1st, and you can apply anytime between October 1st and November 30th, or actually, I believe it actually is already open, or it might be soon, but you can actually submit that application October 1st to November 30th. It is $70 to apply per campus. And so it is something for you all to keep in mind. If you want to apply to all 23 campuses, let's do the math. Let's figure out how much that's going to cost, or maybe you want to just pick your top favorite schools to be able to submit that. You can also request a fee waiver. It is embedded into the application, so you will know immediately if you receive that application fee waiver and for how many campuses as well. The SAT or the ACT, you may need to submit these based on your GPA and also based on the different institutions. So even though they're one institution, they could have a little bit of different requirements. So you're definitely going to want to make sure you keep an eye on that. And then the essay may not be required. Similar to the test scores, that essay may be something that some schools require and some schools may not. For example, Cal Poly SLO does not require for you to submit an essay to be considered for admission. Now, as you're filling this application, there's a list of things that we would say would be helpful for you to have handy as you're filling it out so that you have all the information that you may need in one place and don't necessarily have to stop. And so one of those things is unofficial transcripts. And so that is really important because you are going to need to input your grades so far into that application. And so having it there in paper really allows you to just transfer from your transcripts over to the application itself. You don't need to submit official transcripts until May 1st to the campus that you're deciding that that's where you want to attend. So they will take your word for what you're putting on your application. And so it is really, really important that you please just transfer what you see on your transcripts to your application. You'll need those official test scores, and you can get those through collegeboardoract.org. Again, some campuses may not require those, so keep an eye on that. The Social Security number is something they ask for. You may not have one, and that is completely okay. It is not required for admission into any one of the institutions that we're talking about today, the CSUs, the UCs, or a lot of the privates. Cal Lutheran does not require that. But if you have one, it will ask you to go ahead and put that in, as well as your citizenship status if you have it, or maybe you are undocumented, documented, mixed status family. That is completely okay, but it will ask for that information. I do want to assure all of our applicants that you know that it is confidential. It is for the institutions only. That information is not distributed or anything along those lines. Now you will need a method of payment, and so make sure you have that handy if you don't qualify for that application fee waiver. Your parent citizenship status, again, it's okay if it's a mixed status family, that is completely okay. And then the household's income, and so that income is used to determine that eligibility for that fee waiver, and so it is important that you have that information handy. And then again, for EOP, it does come in handy. So I see some questions here. So this is just for CSUs. That's a great question. This is just for CSUs. We'll get into a little bit of Cal Lutheran and what we require in just a moment. And then where can you find the information if the SAT, if they require SATs? That's a great question. Just go on to their specific school. So say you want to apply to UC Merced, just go to UC Merced through their admission portal or their admission website. You'll be able to see their information. Now, also remember, you have admission counselors at every single one of the institutions that you're applying. And so you'll be able to check in with them one-on-one and get your questions answered and go through that process with them. You definitely don't need to do it on your own. All right, so we go into the UCs a little bit. Here's just the breakdown as well, hopefully to help ease the transition a little bit as you go through this rising senior or a junior, and now definitely a senior going through the application process. And so same thing, one application for all 9 campuses. They also require those A through G, and that's something great about our private schools here in California is that they have a lot of the same requirements in terms of those A through G requirements that you need to have completed. Now, the applications are going to be a little bit different, but they work very similar in that all 9 campuses also share all of your information. Something different that the UCs has that the CSU doesn't is they have personal insight questions. And so there are 8 different questions that you can choose from, but you only need to answer 4. They are a maximum of 350 words per answer. So it's important to keep an eye on those type of questions. Are you answering the prompt? Is there anything that you can maybe take away if you're short on words, or you need to try to narrow it down a little bit? Something that I recommend students do is start brainstorming all 8 questions. So don't necessarily go in saying, oh, okay, these are the 4 that I want to do. Start brainstorming all 8. What you'll notice is that there's maybe 3 or 2, or maybe 4 if you're lucky that they just flow and you're able to continue to write. And that's great. You can definitely choose those 4 to answer. But also it's a little bit hard sometimes to find which ones are the ones that flow. And so identifying the ones that do from very early on is great, because then you can see, okay, I have these 3, and then maybe these 5 are about the same. Let's continue to try to brainstorm. And so that will really help you try to also formulate your thoughts. You want to make sure that each answer tells your admission counselor at the UCs a little bit different about you. And so you don't want to write about the same thing for all 4 answers. You want to try to vary it a little bit. And so maybe you want to write about a club that you're involved in on one. And then on the second one, you're like, oh, actually, that would be a better answer for me to share about this club. So on the first one, instead, I'm going to write about how I help at home and take care of my siblings. Whatever your situation may be, you just make sure that each one is telling us a little bit more about you and something different. So you can start applying November 1st to November 30th. That is the deadline. And it's $70 per application per campus. And so there are also fee waivers that are embedded into the application for you to be able to just know instantly if you have that or not. Okay. Now, also some helpful tips that we recommend that you have nearby as you are filling out the application. Your transcripts, you don't need to submit them yet, but again, you do need them to fill out the application. Test scores if you have those, and then household income and social security number. Again, if you have it, if you don't, it's completely okay. That is still just for that eligibility, or I'm sorry, the financial aid FAFSA to be able to match you, but there is other opportunities for you to still apply for financial aid if you don't have a social security number. And then the citizenship status, and once again, that is confidential. And so we'll get into now a little bit of the common application, and then I'll share what Cal Lutheran requires so that you all know. But know that the common application itself, it is used by over 900 different institutions. They can be in-state private schools, they can be out of state. And so it's really important as you're looking at schools that are not part of the UC or CSU system to see how they're applying. And so Common App is a really great resource. A lot of the different schools that you'll see definitely have those. And so you go commonapp.org. That is the place to start. You start off by creating an account. And these next part might be a little bit hard for you to visualize if you haven't seen it yet, but the application is open. So you can start working on it. You can submit it as early as today if you wanted to, at least for Cal Lutheran. A lot of the same institutions, you are also able to submit it. Definitely don't recommend you submit the same day. You definitely want to give yourself some time to go through it, make sure that you're answering all the questions to the best of your ability, that you're chatting with your parents to make sure that the information is correct, taking some time with a personal statement that we'll talk about in just a moment, reviewing it, and then going back and submitting. But when you apply, one of the first screens that you will see is your dashboard. Now, your dashboard allows you to see all of the different institutions that you're applying once you add the different institutions on there, which I'll talk about in just a second, but it'll show you kind of like a snippet, or it will consolidate all of that information into one place. And the information that it consolidates is, of course, the name of the school. But my favorite thing is that it shows you your deadline. And so you'll be able to see, for example, California Lutheran University, I am applying early action, therefore my deadline is November 15th. And so you're able to help keep track of those. I don't believe it sends you alerts, so it's still important for you to make note of when those are. Set earlier deadlines for yourself so that you're not trying to do everything last minute. I'm going to skip down a little bit to that college search tab that I was mentioning, or that you will see when you start your common application. Now, that college search tab is where you will go to actually add the different institutions to your common application. If you know where you want to apply, all you need to do is go through, type in the name, and then that institution will pop up, and then you just add them to your application. However, maybe you don't know exactly, but maybe you know you want to go out of state, or maybe you know you want to stay within a 50-mile radius of any zip code, maybe your home zip code, or you want a school that's larger than 30,000 students, or maybe you want a school that's large or like smaller than 10,000 students. You can put that information into those filters, and then it will give you a list of all of the different schools that fill those criteria that you just put in. If you know that where you want to apply, don't worry about the filters, leave all of those empty, leave them blank, because sometimes it can trip it up a little bit, and depending on what you put, maybe a school won't show. And so again, if you know where, just go ahead and type it in. Now, the common application itself, that is the one application that is going to all of the different institutions. So if you apply to 5 different institutions via the common application, we are all going to get that one common application. And so it is really important that on this section of the application, you make it specific to you. You don't want to write about how much you love Cal Lutheran and you're looking forward to being a Kingsman or a Regal. You don't want to talk about Gumby or anything along those lines. You want to just talk about you. Reason being that you don't want to send that to any other institution, right? You just want us to know how much you love Cal Lutheran. And the where you do that, or where you can do that, is under My Colleges. So once you add all of these institutions, not only will they show up on your dashboard, but they're going to show up under My Colleges. And you'll see that each institution has different questions for you to answer. Now, anything that's asked under My Colleges will only go to that specific school. So there where Cal Lutheran asks, why do you want to come to Cal Lutheran? You'll say, because I went to a presentation that Diana did and she was amazing and she sold me and I want to go here. That's where you can definitely be a little bit more specific. But definitely, again, just keep the Common App very general, very much about you, not institution specific. So a couple details. It just opened up. It opened up August 1st. Like I said, you are able to start filling it out and submitting those applications. It is important to know that each school has different deadlines. There's also different types of deadlines and different application rounds. So we have early decision, and that is where you are telling that school, if you admit me, I will go here. You are deciding early. Then we have early action, which really is an early notification system where you're telling the institutions, hey, I'm interested. I would love to apply early. That way you let me know early if I'm admitted or not. And then you have your regular decision, which is for us January 1st, and that's completely okay, just depending on your own timeline. And so it is really important that if any of you are interested in applying early decision at any one school, that you read the agreements and the stipulations to that, because it can limit if you're applying early action or if you're applying to other schools in general. So please make sure that you read all of that fine print. Now, the application fee depends on the school, and also the application fee waiver. For us, the fee waiver is going to be part of the Cal Lutheran specific questions. I believe it is question 2 or 3 once you click Cal Lutheran in our specific questions. Now, if you maybe want a fee waiver or feel like you would qualify for a fee waiver, feel free to reach out. You can reach out to your direct admission counselor. You're welcome to reach out to me, and we'll definitely make sure that happens for you. We're definitely happy to provide any sort of assistance we can for our students to make sure that if they want to apply, that application fee isn't a barrier for them. And then the personal statement, again, that is part of the common application itself, that section that gets sent out to everyone. And I have some tips for you following in just a moment on how to be able to fill that out to the best of your ability. All right, so let's see here. Now, a couple tips for the Common App. So again, I talked a little bit about, actually, I may have gone over most of these, but the college search. So again, just if you know where you want to go, just go ahead and type them in, and then those filters may throw you off a little bit. Okay, so the common application. So when you go onto the common application tab, you'll see that there's an additional information section. When should you use it? Everyone should use it. That is a space, that is free space for you to let us know anything else about you that has not been covered in your application so far. And so I definitely encourage students to use it all the time. If you haven't chatted about how you are a first generation college student, that's a wonderful space to do so. If maybe you want to discuss the disciplinary action in further detail, that's a great space to do it. Your personal statement should really be that, a personal statement coming from you. That additional information is just to provide that additional context. And so if grades dipped your sophomore, junior year, let's chat about that. And so that's a really good space to be able to do that. I'm always keeping in mind that every single section of the application should tell us something new about you. What you don't want to do in the additional information section is simply tell us all of your activities again. So that's in another part of the application where we get to see what you've been involved in, what have you been doing for extracurricular activities. That additional information is just additional, right? And so that's the really important piece. That's a common mistake some students make. At Cal Lutheran, it's not like you're going to be denied. It's just like, oh man, I wish they would have used this space to be able to share a little bit more. Something I always like to share with families and students is the application is a one-way communication. You get to tell me a lot about you, but I don't get the chance to ask you any questions about it. And so as you're going through your application, ask yourself, Would they have any questions? Are they going to ask me why I changed high schools? Are they going to ask me why my grades dipped? Or are they going to ask me what happened when I was in this disciplinary violation? Anything along those lines, that's a really great space to be able to include that. Most importantly, and I will say this multiple times, it's really important that you start early and that you submit before the deadline. All of this is online. So imagine the thousands of students that are applying. And if you all log in, for example, for us, November 15th is our deadline. If you all log in November 15th at 11:58 p.m. and are trying to submit your application, it could cause the system to crash. And same thing for the UCs and same thing for the CSUs. And so it's much easier if you're like, okay, Cal Lutheran's deadline is November 15th, but I'm going to submit it by November 10th. That way you give yourself a little bit of space, a little bit of time should something happen, but then you know that you need to complete it by November 15th and then it's in and you no longer have to worry. This is also really helpful when you're asking for letters of recommendation from teachers or counselors to let them know, I'm trying to submit everything by the 10th, the actual deadline is the 15th. You should give them plenty of time to write those letters of recommendation, at least 2 weeks. You want to make sure that it's a really great quality letter. If you let them know the day before, chances are it may not be able to be as strong. So please let them know with plenty of time in advance. Okay, so now writing your personal statement. So there's 7 different prompts that you can pick from. Like the personal insight questions, I recommend that you briefly start writing all of them and see which one's the one that is coming out the easiest, which one's the one that you're able to continue to write about and maybe have to stop yourself. One of the biggest thing I like to tell students, it's okay to not have a big story, right? I feel like the news sometimes shares these stories of these extraordinary circumstances that happen to a student and how they've overcome that. And that's wonderful. And I'm glad that they've able to overcome some of those barriers, some of those obstacles. But the truth is, I know when I was a senior in high school, I didn't have that like epiphany moment of me jumping out of a helicopter and saving someone's life. That didn't happen to me. And so I sometimes felt like, is this good enough? And the answer is yes. This isn't supposed to be an epiphany moment story. It's supposed to be a story that tells us a little bit about you. It's supposed to help us get to know you and see if maybe this institution would be a right fit for you. So it's okay. Your story is more than enough. Just make sure it's your story that you're telling. For something that you can definitely write about is your interest. What are you interested in? Is it for example, the major that you want to come into, is there a story behind that that you think is really important? Do you want to write about maybe a barrier or obstacle that you've overcome? You can write about that. Do you want to write about what's important to you? Maybe your core values, who you are as a person, who you are as a student. All of those would be wonderful subjects that you could all continue to explore. Personally, I recommend that students have 3 readers for their personal statement. So once you're done, right, there's going to be a lot of writing and rewriting, but once you're done, take a deep breath and be proud of yourself because that is an accomplishment. And then identify 3 different people that you're going to ask to read your application. Your first reader, let them know that you are asking them to just read, to proofread, to make sure that there's no grammar mistakes, to make sure that there's no spelling mistakes, and let them know that you have other readers reading for content. The reason I say this is because if you ask multiple readers, they're all going to give you feedback. And then sometimes that feedback could be opposite. And then you're stuck trying to say, oh my gosh, which one's the one I'm supposed to listen to? So if you have very specific people reading for very specific things, it's going to make your life a little bit easier. So your first reader is a proofreader. Your second reader, I recommend it be someone that you trust, but maybe someone that doesn't know you all that well. And the reason for that is because you want to make sure that this personal statement is sharing something new about you. So this person that maybe you trust but doesn't know you all that well, ask them, did you learn something new about me? Were you able to pick up on X, Y, and Z that I wanted to really portray in this personal statement? And ask them for their honest feedback in that. Because if you're trying to tell us something new and it doesn't come across, then we need to do a little bit more of rewriting. And then the third reader, I recommend it be someone that you trust and someone that does know you really well. And they're not asking, or you're not going to ask them to read for content so much in terms of, is it something new? Because they've already know you, so they wouldn't be able to answer that question. But what they are going to want to read for is, does this sound like me? Is this something that I would say maybe in conversation? Is this something that you're able to maybe portray or see a little bit of my personality in. And so those 3 readers, I think, make really strong personal statements once the final copy comes out. And last but not least, make sure you answer the question. And so if you're answering a prompt, go back to the question and say, okay, did I answer it? And all of those 3 readers can definitely help you see if you did or if you did not. So I'm going to pause right here for just a second. I see some questions coming in. Will there be a recording of the Zoom? Yes, and you will be receiving it as well so that you can continue to go back and check in. Maybe you want to rehear something or read something on the slides, you definitely can. And what you can also do is reach out, right? So I'll post my contact information again so that if you do have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me directly and I'll be happy to help. Is the additional information section something that goes out to all of the schools on the Common Application? Yes. And so that is something that goes out to everyone. And so that is something also to keep in mind. But it's also good if you're sharing something with one school about yourself, it would be really good for you to share it with all of them. Is the additional information section, should we include reasons we chose not to submit a standardized test? Not necessarily. If schools are test optional, you don't need to excuse yourself or explain why you didn't submit those test scores. You definitely don't need to do that. You can just not submit them, is my initial answer. And again, it's just going to depend on the schools that you're applying. Okay, great questions. Now we're going to go a little bit more in depth into the essay. Do you need titles for personal insight questions in the personal statement? Not necessarily. So the personal insight questions are going to be little blurbs, like little paragraphs, right? So it's, I believe, a 350 word maximum. And so it's going to be quick snippets. And then your personal statement, we have the prompt when we see it. I think if you want to include a title that shows maybe creativity or to try to summarize, that's okay. You won't be knocked down on that. But really, we're just focused on the actual personal statement piece. Okay, so I'm going to continue on with this. We have a lot of amazing resources out there, and it can be really overwhelming. I don't know if any of you have done a Google search, if you've done like common application tips or personal statement tips. A lot is going to pop up. And so what we've done is we've consolidated a lot of really amazing resources and kind of giving you step 1, step 2, step 3. And so you can definitely, they are cited all down at the bottom, so you can go back and search any of these different articles or pieces if you want a little bit more in-depth information. But for example, Chicago Public Schools, they tell us where to begin, you brainstorm. So one way that you can tackle a personal statement, and again, I just want to say this is one way, there's so many different ways, but if you're like, I don't really know what to share or what to say about myself, start with 3 words that describe you, and you're looking for adjectives. We want to make sure that we move away from like, I think I'm cool, or my friends think I'm a jokester, right? We want to really pay attention to the connotation behind words. We want to try to avoid some of those words like cool. And so think about, for example, are you creative? Are you a leader? Are you an artist? Are you family oriented? All of these things could be things that you could use to describe you, and take those words and then write 2 to 3 sentences about each of the words and how they describe you. The how they describe you is going to be the really important piece, because again, that's going to be what tells us about you. It's okay to explain why people like you for these traits. And so one of the hardest things, and I'll just speak for myself, to do while I was going through my application process was to brag about myself. That's not something that is really easy to do, but this is your chance to brag about yourself and tell us about how amazing you all are and how lucky we would be to have you at our institutions. And so write about that, right? Write about why people like you for being a leader, how you step up maybe and help mentor other students, or how you have done, a lot of community service and you have become a leader in a certain organization. So all of these things are just, again, to help you brainstorm. What you'll realize is that your essay may not be about, here are 3 adjectives that describe me, but maybe, like I said, one of those is a family oriented, that you are a family oriented person. And maybe your personal statement is going to come out from that one adjective. Now comes this personal statement. And again, most important, or one of the most important tips that they give is to explain how these traits are going to shape you in the future as well. So if you pick one, talk about how that you see that affecting you or impacting your college career. maybe further. It's really hard also to think 4 years in advance or 10 years in advance. And I fully recognize that, but that's also something for you to start thinking about and brainstorming. So after you've brainstormed, we say to just let your first draft flow. And this is through College Board. And gather all of those different notes, kind of do a brain dump, put it all into paper. If you start writing one sentence and then your mind goes somewhere else, that's okay. Leave that sentence half done and go where your brain is telling you to go and just dump it all into the piece of paper. Then you'll gather all of those all of those notes and see like, okay, in this part, I was starting to write about my activity. So let me group all of those guys together. These different notes, I'm talking about what's important to me. Let me group those together and start to create some sort of outline. And it may not be that all of those are going to flow into one outline, but maybe each one of those could be its own outline. So I know it's a lot of work, but really trying to see which one you feel most comfortable writing and which one flows the best is going to be really important. Don't focus on it being perfect or errors. Like I said, if you are caught mid-sentence, that's okay, keep going. This is just a brain dump to help you get started. It's also really important that you continuously visit that prompt. So remember when I was like, make sure you answer the prompt throughout your writing stages, go back and reread the prompt and ask yourself, am I answering this question fully? Okay, it's a 3-part question. First part, did I answer it? Yes. Okay, second part, maybe not so much. Maybe I need to be a little bit stronger in this part. Third part, still working on it. So that way it can also help guide what you are writing down. And add specifics where you can. Some of my favorite personal statements that I have read have been very specific, where it's a story maybe or something that happened, and then they kind of big picture it out to tell me more about themselves. And so you can start really specific and then be more general about you and who you are as an overall person and not just the story. That is completely okay. But as many times as you can use examples or something specific, the more we will feel like we are actually having a conversation with you and are there with you, maybe even in that moment as well. So once you're done, and I briefly touch base on this again, but ask for feedback, right? The best writing is always going to be rewriting. And if you are submitting your first draft, chances are maybe there's more space or there's areas where we could continue to improve that personal statement to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward. Never ever really submit your first draft. It's your essay is not just a reflection of who you are, but it also helps us gauge your writing skills. And so it is really important that you proofread and proofread and proofread. A lot of the times what happens is your brain will capture what you think you are writing. And then when you go back and read it out loud or read it after not looking at it for a couple hours or a couple days, you'll realize that you're missing words, right? That your brain was just putting into that sentence because your brain knew that that's what you wanted, but it's actually not on paper. So you want to make sure that you're also reading it out loud to yourself, that other people are reading it, that other people are reading it out loud, to try to catch a lot of those grammar mistakes or typos or anything along those lines. So they also recommend to ask peers, teachers, school counselors, and family members to read them. Give them plenty of time. You, like I said, like similar to letters of recommendation, give them 2 weeks, 3 weeks. The more time that you give them, the more time they can be thorough, the more time that they can plan to spend on your personal statement or your letters of recommendation. You don't want it to be, hi, I'm submitting tomorrow, can you please look at it? And it's 11 o'clock at night, right? Just think about being on the other side where you're like, maybe they're like not even available. Maybe they have vacation plan. Maybe there's a big exam going on that they need to prep for. Anything along those lines, you really want to make sure that you're aware and conscious of other people's time. And tell them what you need, right? So like I mentioned, ask for different readers to give you very specific feedback. Get feedback in stages. So the stage 1 is the content. Are there any gaps missing? Are we answering the prompt? And then the stage 2, style, grammar, punctuation, and spelling. And I would just personally add that stage 3 and stage 4. Is it something new that somebody is learning? And does it sound like you? A couple of keys to success to kind of summarize everything that we've gone over. Start early. More time equals less stress. Fully recognizing that is just a stressful process. You could start now, and chances are you might still feel a lot of stress, and that's okay. Listen to your body too. If you need to take a break and go play a sport, go play with your siblings, take a nap, read, listen to music, dance it out, whatever you need to do that, right? But the more time that you give yourself, the more time that you can take those breaks, and that's going to be really important. Be yourself and be honest. You want to write about something that you love, something that's happened to you, about who you are, and you don't want to use anybody else's work. So that's really important. Talk about starting off in the right foot. You don't want to apply to an institution by plagiarizing and putting somebody else's words as your own. Stay focused. Find your theme and stick to it. So once you've done all those brain dumps, once you've started writing all these different prompts, find the one that you're going to do and answer. There's definitely a quality over quantity. Don't feel like you have to use all 650 words for your common application essay. As long as you've answered the prompt, as long as what you want to say comes through, that is completely okay. Right? And then rewrite, right? Rewriting is the best type of writing, and proofreading. I cannot stress that enough. I've read a couple essays that have a lot of proofreading, and it's distracting. It takes away from what I'm actually trying to get from the personal statement. If my brain's like, oops, typo, and then I keep reading, oops, typo, and then I keep reading and I keep doing that, it takes away. So get a second opinion also. Something else that you should ask one of your feedbacks, or the people giving you feedback, is where can you improve? And don't settle for like, it's good. Like, I think it's fine. Want to be like, okay, what am I missing? And maybe you won't know right away, right? And so maybe they're like, there's something missing, and that's okay. Break it up. Again, if you start early, you can do multiple drafts of your personal statement. And please, please, please submit on time. Do not wait until the last minute. You don't want to be one of those students that then is like, hey, I need more time because the system crashed. Some institutions may be very flexible and give you a little bit more time. Some institutions may not. And what if the one school you really want to go to is not able to offer you any additional time? And the reason you couldn't submit your application is because we waited until the last minute. Don't do that to yourself. Like, give yourself the best chances you can when you're submitting your application. Okay, I know I dumped a lot of different information on you all today, and so we're going to move a little bit into the Q&A. Now, I know you all also submitted some questions. Thank you for doing that. We'll definitely answer those as well, and I'll answer the ones that you have here. So if you have any questions, drop them into the Q&A. The chat, I think, is getting a little busy, but drop it into the Q&A. We'll make sure we get to those. Where do you include letters of recommendation on the Common Application? That's great. So on the Common Application website, and then there's the section for Common Application, you will see that one of the tabs says recommenders. There you will be able to input your counselor, your teacher, coach's contact information, and then they will get an email from Common App saying like, hi, Diana Hernandez has added you as a recommender. Go here to submit your letter of recommendation. They can do it that way. Sometimes Common App just doesn't work, and that's completely okay. Sometimes the UC system doesn't work, and that's okay too. And so something that you all can do also is, if your recommender is having a hard time submitting a letter of recommendation, reach out to your admission counselors, reach out to the admissions office and ask them, is there any way else that my recommender can submit the letter of recommendation? For Cal Lutheran specifically, we're happy for them to just email it directly to us. It doesn't necessarily have to go through Common Application. So if they're having a hard time, or for some reason they're not able to create an account or anything along those lines, they can send it directly to us. How many letters of recommendation do you need? That is going to depend on the different institutions. At Cal Lutheran, we require one letter of recommendation. It needs to be from a teacher or a counselor, someone that knows you academically. You can't submit more than that. We'll read up to 3. It is really important that you try to also give us a little bit of variety. So again, every piece of your application should tell us something new about yourself. So if you had one teacher writing you that letter of recommendation, if you ask a second teacher to tell us something about you, chances are they're both going to tell us how amazing you are in the exact same way. So instead, maybe you've done community service, maybe you have a part-time job. Let's ask one of those supervisors to write you a letter of rec. Or maybe you're very involved in your sport, have the coach. Maybe you're very involved in a community organization in your church. Somebody else that's going to shine a different light on you, so then that way I get to know you a little bit better. Are we able to see the letters of recommendation that are written? No, you cannot. And so those are confidential. The teachers, counselors will send them directly to us. And so you want to make sure that it's someone you have a really great relationship with, someone that's able to really talk about who you are as a person, and not just say like, yes, Diana was a student in my English class and she got an A. Well, we can see that you took English and that you got an A. So what else can this person tell me about you? But the short answer to that question is no. Does the teacher have to be a high school teacher, or can they be from middle school? Most schools will require for it to be a high school teacher. The kind of more recent, the better, because it tells us who you are as a student right now. If you have a really great relationship with that middle school teacher and they're still able to chat about who you are as a person now, maybe you do a lot of community service with them, maybe you go and volunteer in their classroom, they could be maybe one of those additional support letters of recommendation, but not your primary one. What email address should they use to send the letter of recommendation? They can send it for Cal Lutheran. They could send it to admissions, and I will include this. So it would be admissions with an S at callutheran.edu. Or if you know who your official admission counselor is, they can also send it directly to them. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go to the questions you all submitted prior to this and answer some of those. I believe I try to answer most of these through the presentation. What would make a compelling essay for Cal Lutheran? So for me, I'll answer this question personally. I just want to get to know you. And so what my favorite ones are the ones that tell me more about you, are the ones that share something completely different. And so if you're, for example, if on your activities you're listing, a sport that you're very involved in, like, great, you're telling me already how many hours you are spending in that sport. If you want to write about that sport in your personal statement, that is 100% okay. But maybe share why it's so important to you. Maybe share like how you've been involved, and don't just do like a surface level. Let's really dive deep into that as to why you want to spend that personal statement writing about that. If it's a big part of your life, that's wonderful. Like, why? And so ask yourself that question a lot as you're writing this. Ask yourself, like, why am I writing this? Like, why is this important? There were a couple questions about scholarships. So I want to make sure I answer those. Is there a slight chance that you would be able to get scholarships? So here at California Lutheran University, you are automatically considered for academic scholarships that go up to $25,000. It does not matter which deadline you apply for. So you can apply early action by November 15th, or you can apply regular decision by January 1st. Either one of those two deadlines, again, automatic consideration. If you want to be considered for a presidential scholarship that goes up to full tuition, you do need to apply early action. So you need to apply by November 15th. So go ahead and keep that in mind. Then in addition to that, there's more scholarships that you could potentially be receiving through Cal Lutheran. And then there's, of course, your application for financial aid. So that could be, for example, your FAFSA, your California Dream application, and then that will tell us any institutional, federal, or state financial assistance that you may qualify for. I will share one of the most terrifying things I had to do when I was going through the college search process was submit my application to a school I knew I would not be able to afford if I didn't get that financial aid, if I didn't get some of those scholarships. I recognize that's really scary to do, but that first step is to apply. After you receive an admission, then comes the financial aid piece. That's when we come in and we chat and we see what we can do and how we can support you along in that process. And so just apply. Don't let the sticker price of any school, not just Cal Lutheran, but any school scare you away from applying, because there is a lot of financial aid that you could potentially be eligible for. So sometimes different institutions have a link that says like apply via the common application, and you click that. It's going to be the same as long as it's commonapp.org. Same application. It's all one that we all use. Transcripts are sent directly from your high school for most institutions. So if they're requiring official high school transcripts, they need to be sent directly from your high school to our office or to your admission counselor directly. What do we look for in admissions? What do we look for? We look for a student that is driven, that is strong academically. And what I mean by strong academically, it doesn't mean that you need to have a 4.8 GPA. Maybe your GPA isn't all A's, but is it improving every single semester? Are you showing that you're trying to challenge yourself, right? Have you taken honors or AP classes? Have you taken advantage of those opportunities? Have you been involved in your community, right? California Lutheran University, we are a community in and of itself. And so have you been involved either in your high school or in a community organization? Maybe you haven't. but maybe you are helping your family at home, taking care of grandparents, taking care of siblings, cousins, anything along those lines. And so we look for students that are well-rounded, students that we feel would be a really great fit into this community setting that we have. How can you make your application pop if maybe you haven't taken honors or AP classes? That's a really great question. Share about maybe why you haven't. Is it because you have a part-time job at home or back at home? Is it because you help at home? Is it because you didn't know, right? So I'm a first generation college student. I was very lucky in that I had one of my counselors tell me what AP classes were. Otherwise, my parents didn't know, my siblings didn't know, so I wouldn't have known otherwise. And so have those conversations with us. So here at California Lutheran University, we also have optional admission interviews. And so if that's something you want to do, reach out to me, to your admission counselors, either one of us, and we can set those up so we can have some of those conversations and you can share a little bit about your hesitations or anything that you want to have conversations about. Let's see here. What if you didn't join any clubs? So same thing, let's chat about that. You know, it's part-time jobs, it's translating it for family members. Those other things also tell us that you have great time management skills, that you are responsible, that you care about your community, that you're able to give back. So it doesn't necessarily have to be clubs or being president of a club or being the, I'm totally escaping, but like the leader of your sports club. It doesn't have to be those specific things. There's a lot more that you can tell us about what you've done in high school that will still give us a lot of that same information. What is the application process for a first generation student? It can be a little bit overwhelming because maybe you don't have that support at home because they're also trying to figure it out with you. But know that here at CalU, like I am happy to help any of you, whether you're first gen or maybe you're the 20th person in your family to go to college, that is completely okay. I am here to help. And so if you feel overwhelmed at any one point, reach out and be like, Vienna, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I need help. And I am happy to meet with you. I'm happy to meet with your parents. I'm happy to meet with all of you to just help you in that process. But your process itself is going to be the same. Okay, let's see here. Can I explain what a dean's candidate is? Yeah, so if you receive that invitation, congratulations. I'll just kind of give a quick snippet and then I'm happy to chat one-on-one about that. We can set up meetings or anything along those lines. But essentially what it means is that we feel like you are going to be a really great candidate in our pool. We feel like that Cal Lutheran is going to be a good fit for you and you for us, kind of in essence, in a short snippet, that's what it means. What questions we have? Okay, we have a couple more here. Is there a way to confirm that those writing the letters of recommendation responded to the requests and that they were received? Yes. And so a lot of the different institutions are going to give you logins for application portals where you can see what has been received and what hasn't. And sometimes the recommenders take a little bit more time than you would like. And so that's why you want to give them plenty of time so that if you ask them a month before the deadline and you ask them like, hey, like 2 weeks, okay, great, you all come up with the same deadline. And then maybe they're taking 3 weeks, that's okay because we've built in that buffer. But you will be able to track if they have or have not turned that in via that portal. You can also reach out to your admission counselors directly to confirm. Is there any additional application for the presidential scholarship? There's no additional application itself. It is an invitation only program. And so if you are nominated for that at the time of admission, later on, you'll receive an invitation for you to come to campus and compete for that. So it is an additional step, but not an additional application. What if, yeah, so we have some international students with us. Thanks so much for joining. So what if those classes don't exist in your country? That is completely okay. And I'm assuming this is about IB, AP honors classes. That is completely okay. Your application will not be docked if your country or your high school doesn't have those offerings. We are just going to see, did you challenge yourself as much as you could academically based on what is offered? That's completely okay. Great questions. Let's see here. Any other questions coming up for anyone? How do you apply to the music program? Is it a separate application? Great question. It is not a separate application. So we do have visual performing arts scholarships, and that is going to be a separate application. Those scholarships can go up to full tuition. It depends on the department that you're applying for. For music itself, it can go up to full tuition. Theater, arts, and dance can go up to full tuition, and multimedia and fine art can go up to $5,000. There are different requirements for you to accept those scholarships, but to answer your question, you do not need to apply, you do not need to audition to declare that major, but there is that separate application and audition to compete for one of those scholarships. How soon can I schedule a tour? You can schedule a tour right now. And so I'm going to go ahead and put the link to Cal Lutheran on our website. So you go to callutheran.edu/visit. From there, can you all see those? No, you cannot. Let me try that again. Okay, so you go to callutheran.edu/visit. There you will let us know what date and time frame works best for you, and then you will be able to set up your tour that way. We are limited because of COVID-19 guidelines to the number of families we're able to host a day. And so if that is something you want to do, definitely encourage you all to plan ahead. And that is going to be for a guided tour. So that is one of our current students walking you through campus, sharing a little bit. If maybe those times that we have on our calendar doesn't quite fit your schedule, you can also do self-guided tours as well. And we also do have tours both in English and in Spanish guided. So those will be the ones that somebody walks through this whole process or through campus with you. Yeah, so if you received the Dean's invitation as a junior, that is going to be the invitation for you for next year. And so I will make sure that that carries over for you. Let me just write that down here. Let's see some more question. If I request the UC tuition scholarship with Cal Lutheran, am I still eligible to get other scholarships? Yeah, so that is our public price promise. And so our public price promise, if you're admitted into what in the past has been 6 UCs, we're in the final process of finalizing what the next UCs will be for this coming year. So keep an eye out on our website. But if you were admitted into any of the 6 following UCs, UCLA, UCSB, UC San Diego, Berkeley, Davis, Irvine, or I'm missing one. I'm totally spacing on that. But if you're admitted into any of the 6 UCs that are listed on our website, we will match their average cost of attendance via an academic scholarship. So the academic merit, presidential, and public price promise, they are all merit or academic based. So you would receive one or the other, whichever one's highest, but you could still receive, for example, maybe a smaller VAPA scholarship, or you could receive other institutional financial assistance. You can still receive Cal Grant. You can still receive some of that state or federal financial support. It's just going to depend. But yes, you could receive other scholarships, but just not other academic scholarships. Are there tour once school starts? Yes. So we are doing tours right now, and we will continue until we are told maybe it's not safe to do so. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but we are continuing to do tours throughout the school year. Do we have a criminal justice and criminology degree? We do, and we do have amazing faculty within that. Let's see. Yeah, so is there a way to confirm that those writing the letters of recommendation? Totally okay if you missed the answer. There's a lot of information that's being thrown at you all today. Yes, you will be able to get a login for an application portal where the institutions will be updating what has and has not been received. And so that way you'll be able to see if your letter of recommendation has been received or not. And of course, you can also reach out to your admission counselors. Really great questions. We have time for maybe a couple more. I want to make sure I get all of your questions answered. Is there a specific website used for scholarships in which you can apply? Yes and no. So for Cal Lutheran, there isn't necessarily a separate application other than our visual performing arts scholarships that we are finalizing, and that's just at callutheran.edu/VAPA. Outside instance, so there's no other application that you need to do for scholarships here at Cal Lutheran, again, other than VAPA. Outside scholarships, there will be. And so what tends to happen is each community's scholarship will have its own website or its own application. There's also scholarship search engines, like for example, FastWeb, where you will tell them a little bit about you, and then they will match you with different scholarships all over the nation that you could potentially receive. I do want to say if you sign up for a search engine like FastWeb, you will be getting a lot of emails. And so it's a really great idea for you to create maybe like a Yahoo or a Gmail email address specific for that. So that way you're able to kind of keep track. But that's a really great opportunity as well. And then at Cal Lutheran, we have callutheran.edu/scholarships with an S. And that also has a list of outside scholarships that you could potentially apply for. Okay. Do you have to indicate if you want to live on campus or not to get on these applications if you're not sure? Not necessarily, some of them you do, but not necessarily all of them. I would recommend going with what you would want to do. And then if things change, you can have those conversations with maybe our financial aid office or with that specific organization to see if that would affect it at all. Sometimes some scholarships will say this is specifically for room and board. And so that would be the housing on campus and your meal plan. And so if you decide not to live on campus, they may not be able to award you that scholarship because it was specifically designated for that. So it's going to be really important that you look at the fine print as to what that scholarship is intended for. Can I get a 100% scholarship? Cal Lutheran does not have what we would call like a full ride scholarship. We have those full tuition scholarships, but then if you wanted to live on campus, that would be an additional cost. But then in addition to that presidential scholarship that you could potentially receive, there's other scholarships that you could receive based on your household's annual income and the application for financial aid that you will be submitting. Okay. I'll count to 10 in my head and see if any other questions come up. You're all so welcome. Okay, so this is my contact information. Again, I am more than happy to be a resource for all of you here at Cal Lutheran. You will have your own specific admission counselor that you are more than welcome to reach out to. You may have already been getting some emails from them. I know I've been reaching out to some of my students, but I am still happy to be a resource. So if you have any questions about the college search process, the applications, something that I mentioned, anything along those lines, just know I am here to help, and really the entire team at Cal Lutheran is here to help. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. I wish you all the very best of luck as you embark in this next chapter and go through the college search process. Want to say, like, I know it's scary, I know it's stressful, but as much as you can, still please take care of your mental health, take those breaks when you need to, and still enjoy your senior year as much as you can. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you all today. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.